Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 14th of September. It's game day. The Champions League proper is back at Ibrox. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined firstly by Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good, Derek. You've got to tell us where you are. You can't get away with such lighting and not fill us in on your surroundings.
Yeah,
because people will be speculating, Derek.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be. I'm in deepest, darkest Milton Keynes. I was down at the MK Dons Bolton game last night. It's a funny place. It's almost like East Kilbride on steroids, you could say. Lots of roundabouts and hotels, very much
there,
a new town. So
I've actually been at that stadium, Derek.
Have you? Yeah, it's a lovely stadium, but
nice.
it's soulless for the. I mean, there was only 6,000 there, a 30,000 seater stadium last night. Too big for MK Dons, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's got bedrooms in the hotel that are facing out onto the pitch.
Yeah,
which is a bit of an odd one. I stayed there at a conference years ago. It was it's an interesting stadium, that's for sure, but not the greatest place on earth.
No, it isn't. They've got the snooker and all that takes place there as well. So outside it's pretty good. Loads of restaurants and all that. But looking forward to getting home and watching the Rangers this evening. And of course, let's talk all the fallout from the press conference yesterday. Joshua, you were there for us at Ibrox, speaking to Giovanni van Bronckhorst and Stephen Davis, who was put up for the press. I think that the main talking point is the fact that there will be no John McLaughlin this evening, so Alan McGregor will return between the sticks. Also, interesting points that the manager made on Alfredo Morelos. What was your main takeaways from speaking to the Rangers manager yesterday?
It was one of the most interesting press conferences I've been to Van Bronckhorst. Often he's very measured anyway, doesn't give too much away. But yesterday, I guess there was a bit more of an inquest after 2-4-0 defeats. I asked him about if extra work had gone into set pieces in the week, and he said the Rangers had been focusing more on set pieces, obviously after conceding against Ajax. But he said there's a lot of things that we need to work on after the last two games. He said that Alfredo Morelos is making it difficult to decide who to start. So I don't know about you guys, but to me that sounds like the clearest indication that he could start a game. He's not spoken of him kind of in those terms since obviously he's really since this year, since he was omitted from the squad against PSV. Quite defiant when he was asked about effectively, do you need to alter things after 2-4-0 defeats? And effectively, the point he was making is, you can read the transcript on the website or listen to it on YouTube. Effectively, the point he was making is the issue was not, in his opinion, how Rangers set up. You know, they'd been to PSV and won 2 weeks ago to make the Champions League. It was about individual performances. He says he could pick out 6 or 7 players who weren't effectively anywhere near their level. I think others would maybe pick out a little bit more than that. But effectively saying it's not a systemic issue, it's about individual performance, and equally admitting, look, you can't lose 2 games in a row at Rangers, and he knows that. But even in the face of 2-4-0 defeats, he kind of gives you the response you expect from Van Bronckhorst, which is, I think, a belief in his methods. He's been through difficult periods before, obviously, in his career and as a manager, of course, at Feyenoord, and very much trusting in his ways of getting Rangers out of that. But I think that's not him saying, you know, it's very cliche criticism of managers in this situation, saying, oh, plan A, you stick to plan A and you won't change things. That's not what he's done. He's altered things a lot since he came into the club, in my opinion. I think what he's speaking about more is, for example, the way Rangers have built out from the back in pre-season, or the way they've defended in Europe. You can't just rip that up after one game, and that's true. So tonight's important, Derek, I think, for people to see, without even going into the need for a result, because Napoli are obviously such a strong side. They need a performance that's more cohesive and has more effort, and it allows for a reset after so many goals conceded in the last couple of games.
Yeah. Johnny, I wanted to touch on Morelos, as Joshua said there. What do you take from those comments? Do you think Morelos starts this evening? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, if he does. If I was a manager, he'd start for me. I think Rangers need to start him in this game. Nothing against Antonio Cholak, by the way, but I just think this is his time to shine, as they say. Where do you stand on that?
I totally agree, Derek. I'm motivated, on the ball, desperate to impress. Alfredo Morelos in Europe is quite the it's quite the figure. It's quite powerful. And we've seen it before. And he's looking a lot trimmer. You see the pictures coming in from him in training. The manager says he's in much better shape. Get him in. Get him in, Gio. It's time. Čolak was brought in, and he will do a terrific job to do the job he was brought in to do, which was going up against the lower lights and being a second choice number one, a second choice to the number one striker. The number one striker is Alfredo Morelos. Čolak, I can't praise him highly enough for what he's done since he's come in. He's a very good finisher. But listen, we need to be realistic. I said this yesterday. You need to get your best players on the pitch. And Alfredo Morelos is one of Rangers' best players. And the quicker they get him in, the quicker they'll see the benefits of getting him in. Morelos, we all know, is one of these guys that gets fit through playing games. It's not professional. I don't like it. And ultimately, I think it's probably going to be a marriage that breaks down at the end of this season, Alfredo Morelos and Rangers. I hope not, but I think that's probably going to be the case. But that is the way he is. You just need to get him playing. You need to get him up to speed, and then you'll see the benefit. So I really, really hope that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst gives him the chance to do that. Might only be 50 minutes, 55 minutes, might only be 45 minutes. But just to see him out there for the crowd, I think will be a major help. It's time, and they need him.
Yeah, Stephen gets in touch. He agrees with you, Johnny. He says it's time. The team needs him in. I think that the supporters probably need him in as well. Joshua, they're looking for a lift. We were at the game in Amsterdam on Wednesday. And it was, I mean, they sang that their hearts out, they always do. But the fans we spoke to were a tad subdued. They need a spark, don't they? And do you think Morelos could be the guy to ignite that?
Yeah, I was speaking to someone on the plane home, and they were saying it's the first time they've ever left a European game early, and he'd been going for, X number 20, 25 years, something like that, which I think shows you that last week in the cold light of day 4-0 against Ajax is not a result that in the right context would raise too many eyebrows if Ajax go out and they just play to their absolute peak and Rangers get hit on the counter a couple of times. But it was obviously the context that first half where Rangers kind of fell apart in a way they haven't done in the last 4 or 5 years in Europe. They've always had that solidity, this group to fall back upon, and they obviously need to recapture that tonight, because Napoli, scored 4 goals against Liverpool, had a penalty saved, they're top of Serie A. They're obviously we don't need to try and contextualize how good a team they are. They're very good. They're better than Rangers. Rangers are going to have to be the very best to get anything out of it. And I agree with both of you. I've put Morelos in my starting 11. I predicted starting 11. We don't get to pick it, sadly. That would be good though. Because Čolak, again, I agree with Johnny. Čolak, I think the last couple of games you've seen his limitations, and that's not necessarily a criticism of him. But when you look at what Morelos gives you, getting his team up the pitch, being able to hold the ball in, and I completely agree that they need a lift. I think everyone will need a lift, particularly because of the last couple of games. Morelos can give that, and if Van Bronckhorst is saying something like that yesterday, he's making it difficult to decide who starts. For a manager that doesn't really give that much away in press conferences or give clues, for me, I think he'll start tonight. I think he'll put him in from the start, and if anyone's up for it, I think it'll be Morelos if he does get the nod.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we carry on, I just wanted to touch on this message, a somber one from James Strachan, a friend of the show. He says, "Hi guys from Coffs Harbour. My father passed away yesterday. He had dementia. He'd forgotten me, but still always remembered Rangers. Really sorry for your loss there, James. Hopefully you're okay and your father is looking down tonight at Ibrox on the Champions League, returning for the first time in 12 years, of course. Let's move on. Johnny, the other big talking point from that press conference is the fact that John McLaughlin is injured. He has been called up, incidentally, to the Scotland squad alongside Ryan Jack for the matches next week. However, Alan McGregor coming back in for you. Do you have any doubts about that at all?
No, I think Alan McGregor has been through this before. John McLaughlin is obviously picked up a knock and isn't going to make it. Alan McGregor, the one thing that he's always going to give you is mentality. He's not going to get knocked off his pace by the odd mistake. And and he tends to show up in the big games. That's just the way he is. So, he's getting on a little bit. There's no denying it. He's, 40, and that's quite old for a player in the modern game, obviously. But McGregor has never let Rangers down, really. He's made the odd mistake, but he's always bounced back. And I'm sure that he'll go out there tonight and he'll still provide the kind of shot stopping that he's famous for. The problem that I would have, or the concern that I would have, would be, will Napoli be aware that he struggles when balls are fired in on top of him? That's the kind of the area of his game that I think let him down last season. Rangers don't have any players who are really dominant in that central area. Connor Goldson's off the pace. So he'll have to be bang at it tonight, I think, if he's going to kind of protect his keeper. And James Sands as well, in terms of being aggressive and attacking the ball, because McGregor's not going to come out for it, even if it's on top of him. He's going to sit on his line and hold on. So, yes, there's concerns, yes, there's worries, but ultimately, Al McGregor, I think, deserves the trust that he can go out there and perform.
Yeah. Incidentally, I was speaking to a Napoli podcaster yesterday. You can check that video out on our YouTube channel, folks, and asked about any weaknesses in the Napoli side, Josh, and he actually said their goalkeeper, and it sounded very much like McGregor. He doesn't come for crosses. He tends to stay on his line, and if Rangers put in balls in behind or fire balls in that are maybe 50-50 between a player and the goalkeeper, it says that the Rangers have got a great chance of getting on the end of it. So it's an interesting one. How do you see Rangers approaching this one, Joshua, in terms of trying to get at Napoli in terms of chinks in their armour?
Good question. I'm just actually putting in the comments there. We've got a scout report from an Italian scout who has written a piece on Napoli, which is really good, gives some insight into how they might approach the game. They've obviously went through something of a summer of transition, and I think that's made them stronger. Lost players like Ospina, who was the ex-Arsenal goalkeeper as well, Insigne, Mertens, Koulibaly obviously went to Chelsea. And they're playing, I'd say they're playing a style that's quite in keeping with a lot of the teams around Europe, with fullbacks coming inside at points, wide wingers, attacking number 8s, following the trend of world football in this new kind of 4-3-3. Van Bronckhorst, I'm sure it'll be interesting to see if with McGregor how he accommodates his distribution. The game that comes to mind, and speaking about that, was away against Celtic, the 1-1 Old Firm last season, when McGregor came in for McLaughlin, and he played the ball long, but he played it up to targets as opposed to the 3-0 defeat, when it was kind of a bit of kick and rush, and Rangers didn't seem prepared for that. So I'm sure that will come into consideration tonight. I think you need Morelos in there. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for Arfield from the right, just to give that solidity and know-how and experience next to Tillman and Kent, because I don't see them dropping out. I know Kent's been out of form, but I just think given Van Bronckhorst didn't make changes after the Old Firm defeat a couple of weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, I struggled to see him doing that again tonight. And maybe Ryan Jack in the middle next to Lundstrom. I don't think he's looked good at all this season, Ryan Jack. I think he's... I don't think it's a lack of fitness, but maybe it's just sharpness. Maybe he's not played enough games. He's obviously had a lot of injuries in his career. But Kamara obviously didn't have a good game away in Amsterdam. And when Rangers were in a similar sticky spell at the start of this season, that's where we went for in the middle, Lundstrom and Jack, and he spoke about the character they bring. So wouldn't be surprised if it's that team. Ben Davies probably is too soon for him. I wouldn't be entirely opposed to playing Ben Davies next to Goldson and pushing Sands in next to Lundstrom just for a game like this when you need that solidity and that strong base. But if Ben Davies hasn't played really at all in the last few weeks, I struggle to see that happening.
Yeah, well, Johnny, you've got Davis in there alongside Goldson in your predicted lineup, and also perhaps a surprise Rabbi Matondo over on that right-hand side. What's your reasoning behind those two alterations?
I think that you need to score against Napoli, because I think they'll score against Rangers. And to do that, you need pace in the side. And Matondo has got pace to burn. Ryan Kent has pace to burn. Alfredo Morelos will drop deep. So he'll add to the midfield zone by making those sort of darts into play and holding up the ball. And if he's doing that, he needs runners beyond him. And one thing, that one element of Matondo's game, that pace, is so good that it'll cause anyone problems. He's so quick if he can channel it correctly. So I'd give him the chance. You bring these players in. A lot of people have made their decisions about Rabbi Matondo already. I think, give him a chance in a big game to show what he can do.
Yeah.
He looked very good against West Ham in a high level in pre-season. So I just think, you've spent 2.5 million on a guy. People have already made their minds up. Well, give him a chance in a big game to show that maybe the decisions that they've made are wrong. If he doesn't play well, then okay, then we're exactly where we were at the start of the game. Yeah. And Scott Wright, I thought, was really, really poor in Amsterdam. So it makes sense for me to go for him. I think Scott Wright, I know a lot of people are quite angry with Scott Wright and his quality, etc., etc. But I think Scott Wright is pretty decent in the Scottish Premiership. That's not a problem. He'll create at that level. But when you move up to Champions League, it really is different gravy. And Gio's kind of been talking about that, his previous experiences with Feyenoord when he went up against Manchester City and was on the end of a bit of a shellacking and how they bounced back from it. So I think Rangers have the quality to hurt Napoli, and the way to do that is through pace on the counter, because Napoli are going to have a lot of the ball. Josh, I mean, from reading that piece this morning, they sound quite a lot like Celtic, the inverted fullbacks, the wide rotations. It's kind of a similar setup. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's a bit different in that I've not watched much of them, but from reading that piece, it seems like it's a bit more, what would I say, not one-dimensional, but a bit more consistent with the midfielders always going beyond, the fullbacks going wide and the wingers coming inside. But then at points, the wingers can stay wide as well and attack. And as I was saying, it seems like everyone in the world or a lot of teams in the world are playing with that system where you're playing a lot against defensive blocks. So you need to open them up. So how do you do that? You want to play with tempo, but you also want players who can outplay. You want wingers who can go 1v1, commit a man, so that disrupts the block. And often the space to do that, if teams are, bunched in centrally, is out wide, and you also get to stretch the play in that way. So just thinking on that as well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Rangers have the option up their sleeve to go to a back three tonight. The time that worked really well, obviously, was the second half against Dortmund, where they sat in a bit and managed to, Kent and Morelos in that second half were superb, had that goal chopped off, obviously. I don't know if Van Bronckhorst does that from the start at home, but I could certainly see it if Rangers have a good high-energy first half, if they're able to get the crowd up, if they're able to go in at the level of the break or whatever, and they need to manage elements of the game. I wouldn't be surprised if they do go for that back five. And as Van Bronckhorst said in the press conference yesterday, he actually said an interesting thing, saying that Tavernier will be a lot better physically than he was against Ajax, which I think reveals how he effectively wasn't at his fittest away in Amsterdam. And you could see that for the third goal, couldn't you? And Kudus. I mean, you've seen his quality last night against Liverpool, only caught glimpses of the game. But he's a high-level player. It's not as if Tavernier's been beaten by some nobody, but I think you could see he wasn't at his best. He looked a bit slow. I think Rangers will have that option of going to a back five, although I don't think that's at its best when Barisic is there. And I take your point on Matondo. I guess the argument against it is defensively, has he shown enough? Hibs away, for an example, when Rangers have been sitting in when they've needed to be solid. It all depends on the game plan. Are they going to go out and try and attack Napoli from the off? Are they going to set off a little bit? I think the unanimous team selection opinion, though, is that if Morelos is, as Van Bronckhorst says, better mentally, better physically, you've got to start him in a game like this for me.
Yeah, you're getting a bit of stick, Joshua. Nicky Kearney gets in touch. Joshua is at the wind-up. Jack in Arfield.
Nicky can tell me who she'd play then, or he'd play, and we can
tell us, Nicky, in the comments who your team is for this evening. And Scotty on the scene asked you a question, Johnny. Is Big Johnny going to make the Napoli game tonight?
I am indeed. I'm going to make both games. I'm going to make the under-19 game and the main game. Johnny's getting unleashed out of this cavern. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, of course, as Johnny said, the youth team game at Firhill this afternoon, 2:00 kickoff. It'll be good to if you can make it along there, folks, and support the young lads. They had a great performance against Ajax last week, and it was really enjoyable seeing them in action. David McCallum's young team, lots of talented boys there. Lots of other comments coming in here. This point by Stuart Grant. Johnny, do you think the guys will? Do you guys think we'll defy UEFA and play the national anthem? I think that's going to be...
They are going
Yeah.
to. Yeah, I
Yeah.
reported this last night on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they will. I'm not quite sure that this story about defying UEFA is 100% right.
Yeah.
But regardless, Rangers will be playing the national anthem after the minute silence.
Yeah, and it'd be good to see that. It'd be good to be in the stadium when that has been belted out as well. I like this positivity from Gallant Pioneer. If we win tonight, the group is all square. That's one way of looking at it, Joshua. We touched on the game last night. Ajax unlucky not to take a point from that game. Liverpool with a late winner, a Matip header late on. But as you mentioned there, kudos with an absolute screamer. Bassi earning rave reviews once again. It just shows you it's a very, very hotly contested group, isn't it? Rangers are in some esteemed company in this group.
Yeah, and Spalletti said that last night. I actually read you some of his comments, Derek, because they were interesting. He was speaking through a translator, but he said that, pardon me, it was sentimental for football to have so many great historical teams in one group. This doesn't always happen in football. For us, it's a chance to play in many great stadiums. We know that Rangers are used to pressure. This stadium gives their players a force of energy. I've read in the past it's impossible not to have some sort of reaction at Ibrox. And then he goes on to say what his team need to do to ensure that they're not impacted by that. So yeah, and interesting. Also said he felt like it was Christmas Eve, given he was playing so many games in quick succession and different competitions. So he seemed like a guy with a bit of personality on him. Obviously paid his respects to the family of the Queen and the nation, and saying this is a big game. The story, the atmosphere that Rangers brings, it means anything can happen. So and Anguissa, the player that was speaking as well, similar kind of sentiment, saying that it's so important that Napoli reach high levels to win, etc., etc. So I'm sure they'll travel with a lot of respect. Anguissa said something along the lines of that trust me, I've seen videos of this team. I know how good I know the quality they possess. But yeah, as we keep saying, it's obviously going to be really difficult. I think it depends, Derek, what Rangers team come to play, and if it's the one that was in Ajax last week, I don't think they stand much of a chance. If it's the team that's got so many results at home at Ibrox, it's a different game altogether. And Van Bronckhorst said the time to perform is today at 8 o'clock after the last couple of games, and I think we just all need to wait and see what happens before making some judgments on it.
Yeah, point here that's been made. I can see Ajax topping the table, Napoli second. That would not surprise me. Really top sides that Rangers are in with in this group. Of course, Rangers were in pot 4, Ajax in pot 1, Liverpool in second, and Napoli in pot 3. It just tells you the strength of the teams in the group. In terms of the fans, Joshua, how big a role do you think they can play tonight? We've seen it last season. They were the 12th, 13th, 14th, and the rest. They really helped Rangers push on. I liked it when John Lundstrom spoke in the press in the last few weeks, talking about how it gave them that extra yard of pace, and it really helped them over the line in terms of getting to Seville. How big a role can they play tonight?
Yeah, and Lundstrom said, I don't know if it was before the Union game. I think it was before the Union game. Basically, we fancy our chances against anyone. And this is the chance to prove it. This is the top level of European competition. I think Rangers have played similar levels of quality, maybe at points in the likes of Dortmund and Leipzig, maybe, but a step up to the Champions League at home. It is a step up both in quality and prestige, and all of these metrics you'd measure it by. So the crowd, of course, play a big part. But it might not be that, Union wasn't the fast start with a goal within the first 20 minutes. The atmosphere was fantastic at the start. And then when that goal went in just before half time, and obviously the second half, it really took off. Rangers I think they need to stay in the game. They can't concede early goals, as cliche as that is. But I think anyone would expect a better performance than Ajax way, and I actually don't think it would take too much to just ensure that happens off the bat, because Rangers were so kind of poor and off the pace. Again, the interesting thing for me is Van Bronckhorst only made one change in the midfield. So it was one change in the whole team last week after the Old Firm's defeat. Will he make more after a week's training?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Team Giovanni Van Bronckhorst puts out this evening. I also wanted to touch on a piece that's on the website, folks. You can go and check it out this morning. The football finance expert, Kieran Maguire, I'm sure you're aware of him on social media and the likes. He's written a terrific piece for us with regards to Rangers' finances and the £100 million that has been bandied about since Rangers made the Champions League group stages. Johnny, this is a terrific piece written by Kieran Maguire. Really explains in great detail why Rangers aren't going out spending chunk loads of cash on players. It's quite fans just see black and white, many of them, and they just expect Rangers to go out and splash the cash now that they've made the Champions League. But this piece really explains in great detail why it's not as clear cut as that.
Yeah, Derek, I mean, there's been a lot of chat about the finances. There's been a lot of chat about this £100 million windfall. And listen, fundamentally, what I wanted to do was go out and get someone who really understood finances and address it. Because it's all very well us coming at it with our opinions, but fundamentally, I'm not an accountant. You've got no history in financial services. Joshua doesn't know anything about how you manage a business. So what we felt was the best way to handle it was to go try to find somebody. And fortunately enough, Kieran Maguire, who does the Price of Football podcast, is an academic at the University of Liverpool and is basically the number one guy in football finance. Agreed to do it, and the article is absolutely brilliant. It really is a very, very well explained deep dive piece. It's long, it's going to take you a little bit of time to get into it, but there's so much information there, and it really does break down in a really simple way how Rangers finances have been working out and how transfers, how transfer money comes in, and why that isn't necessarily always delivered in the same way as you might expect, certainly the way it's presented in the media, perhaps. Pardon me. So it is a really detailed piece. It's a really enjoyable piece that will hopefully allow you to understand the kind of processes that are going on and where that money has gone to. And for me, it was important to get an independent expert and someone who has no ties in terms of the club. You know, he's not a Rangers fan. He's based in Liverpool, and I think it's a really good, solid bit of work that deserves to be read. So I'd urge people to go and have a really good look at that and inform themselves about the kind of way that the club's finances have been run. Yeah,
and it's and the link is in the comments section, folks. So go and check it out when you get a chance. It's a really fantastic written article. Before we go, then, gentlemen, I'll just finally get your score predictions for tonight. Joshua, are Rangers going to kick off their Champions League campaign with a much-needed 3 points?
Well, I think it would be a brave person to predict 3 points after match day one. I think if you're being optimistic, maybe go for a draw, or if you're very optimistic, go for a win. If Rangers can weather certain storms, I think, and if they can use the crowds, if they can recover the solidity they've had in Europe prior to that Ajax game, though, I think they have a chance. And at home, you'd imagine that they would be, as I say, much more aggressive and combative than they were away in Amsterdam last week.
Johnny, are you feeling positive ahead of this one?
Do you know what? Strangely, I am a little bit right now. Is that rational, you might ask? Listen, I think it's going to be a really emotional night at Ibrox tonight. You've got the minute of silence, and then you've got the national anthem ahead of the game. I think that's going to make a really powder keg atmosphere, a really emotional atmosphere. And you just hope that the players can feed off that tonight and go out and do themselves proud. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Rangers win or lose tonight. What matters is that Rangers stand tall tonight. They have not stood tall in the last 2 games. They have been meek and they have folded like a deck of cards. The truth is, they need to fight, they need to play for the jersey, and they need to leave blood on that pitch. Not literally, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
They really, really need to show what it means to play for that jersey and give Napoli a game. I think the minimum is that Napoli come off that pitch drenched in sweat tomorrow night, knowing what Ibrox is all about, knowing that Rangers are a side that are tough to beat. And if they can do that, I'll be happy that there's been a step forward taken, because the meek surrender of the last 2 games must not continue. If it does, we're in uncharted territory.
Yeah, I'm not sure about tonight. I really hope we get a good performance, and a performance that we know this team is capable of. But going up against a top quality side and the form Rangers are on, it could be a difficult evening. I would bite your hand off for a 1-1 draw just now. I think that will get Rangers going and heading into that double header with Liverpool with a little bit of confidence, you could say. So yeah, really looking forward to tonight. If you're going, folks, safe journey over to Ibrox. Sing your hearts out, and hopefully you can cheer the team on to a very positive result. Just before we go, as you can see the little ticker below, we've still got that fantastic offer on the website. Just £1 for 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. As ever, I'll put the link in the comment section as well, so you can head over to there and you can take advantage of all the great stuff that we've got on the website just now. Okay, we'll be back again later. Joshua, you'll be doing a pre-match video when the teams are announced, and also we'll speak to you at full time as well once we hear from the manager, and we'll give our post-match reaction. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.